Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, lived a young girl named Cinderella. She had a heart full of love and a radiant smile, and she spent most of her time out in the garden, finding her dearest friends among the birds and the animals. But inside her home, things were completely different. After her mother passed away, her jealous stepmother forced Cinderella to do all the heavy housework, leaving her dressed in tattered rags while her two stepsisters lived in luxury. Then a royal announcement shook the kingdom. The prince was hosting a grand ball at the palace, and every single maiden in the land was invited. The stepsisters spent weeks preparing their gowns and practicing their dances. But when it came time to leave, the stepmother laid down a cruel rule. Cinderella must stay home and finish her endless chores. As the carriage rolled away toward the palace, Cinderella was left completely alone. She sat by the fading light of the fireplace, tears welling in her eyes, wishing for just a taste of the magic her mother used to tell her about. In a house where cruelty was rewarded with luxury, Cinderella's goodness had left her with nothing but the cold ash in the fireplace. The more she gave of herself, the less she seemed to have, and the silent cottage offered no path to the life she dreamed of. Suddenly, the dark room was filled with a soft, sweet voice. A beautiful figure appeared, surrounded by a gentle, glowing light. It was her fairy godmother. She hadn't appeared by accident. The fairy godmother came specifically because Cinderella had faced so much cruelty without ever losing her kind heart. And now it was time for that goodness to be rewarded. With a wave of her wand and a swirl of glowing magic, she turned an ordinary garden pumpkin into a magnificent golden carriage. Next, the fairy godmother turned her attention to Cinderella. In an instant, those dusty, tattered rags vanished, replaced by a stunning gown fit for royalty. And for the final touch, the magic focused on her feet, gifting her the most delicate glass slippers that sparkled like tiny stars. But there was one very strict rule attached to this gift. The magic was only temporary. The fairy godmother warned that the moment the clock struck 12, everything would revert exactly to how it was. Cinderella finally looked on the outside, the way she had always been on the inside. She climbed into her carriage, feeling like a true princess, but racing against a very real ticking clock. When she stepped into the palace ballroom, the entire crowd fell silent. The prince was immediately charmed by her, and the two gravitated toward each other. They danced together as if in a dream. For the first time in years, Cinderella was experiencing the exact warmth, joy, and celebration that her stepmother had tried so hard to keep from her. But as the hours flew by in a blur, the heavy bells of the palace clock suddenly began to chime. That first stroke sent a shiver straight down her spine. The clock struck 12, and she realized the time limit had completely expired. Cinderella tore herself away from the prince and sprinted down the grand staircase. In her rush, one of those delicate glass slippers slipped off her foot, and she had to leave it behind to escape into the night. The enchantment dissolved as she reached her cottage, returning her to the rags and chores she had left behind. But as the sun rose over the palace, a single shimmering glass slipper remained on the stone stairs, the only part of the dream that didn't turn back to dust. The very next day, the prince launched a kingdom-wide investigation. He traveled door to door, determined to find the one young maiden whose foot perfectly fit that glass slipper. When the royal entourage arrived at Cinderella's cottage, her stepsisters eagerly tried to force their feet into the shoe. But no matter how hard they squeezed, it was a comical, impossible fit. Then, stepping quietly out of the shadows, Cinderella approached the prince and asked for her turn. The prince agreed, and as the tiny glass shoe slid onto her foot, it was a flawless match. He instantly recognized the girl he had danced with at the ball. Her stepsisters watched in total shock. The servant girl they had mocked and mistreated for years was actually the future princess of the realm. The sisters cowered, waiting for Cinderella to use her new royal power to seek revenge. Instead, she reached out and took their hands. She had every reason to be bitter, yet she offered them the same gentle grace she had shown to every living thing in the kingdom. A magic wand can build a carriage or weave a gown, but it cannot forge that kind of inner strength. Cinderella's life shows us that true, lasting magic comes from a refusal to let the world make you cold. It is the choice to stay kind and loving, even when it would be easier to forget how.